Hello, everyone, and welcome to BR Guesty International Women's Day Special, Lessons from Leaders in the Vacation Rental Space. And I have an amazing team here with me of panelists. And I am Vered Review Schwartz, President and COO of Guesty, the property management software company. And with me today are four amazing female leaders from our industry. Please welcome Jennifer Shea, VP of Marriott Homes and Villas, Amy Hynode, founder and editor of VRM Intel, Brandy Canali, COO of Sextant Stays, and Lisa Chen, VP Global Lodging Connectivity and Solutions of Expedia Group. Welcome, ladies. Lovely having you here. We will be starting with some opening remarks and some data from Guesty about trends for spring and summer, just to keep us in a good mood, and continue with a panel discussion with Jennifer, Amy, Brandy, and Lisa, and we'll allow a live audience Q&A and some closing words. So looking into Easter weekend, we see that as the major next holiday travel, especially for Brits that had a very difficult 2021 with all the lockdowns, but also for the US. So as you can see, the numbers of booking volume that we're seeing is 26% higher than last year in the US and 30% higher than pre-COVID days. So we're well above pre-COVID days reservations. In the UK, we're comparing to 2020 because 21 was a lockdown year. So it just sounds like hundreds of percentages, but it's 42% higher than 2020 and almost meeting the pre-COVID days reservation volume. When we look at summer, it is sizzling, and June to August worldwide booking volumes are crazy, with the US leading with 98% higher than 2021. And look at that, 76% higher than pre-COVID days. The UK, 91% higher than last year, and a bit higher than pre-COVID days. And Australia, for them, of course, it's the winter season, with 25% higher than pre-COVID days. So all around, we see people are really looking to book their summer vacations. As I'm sure you can recall, during COVID, people did not really want to book in advance and were only booking last minute. Now we definitely see people planning their summer vacation, which is great. We also see that people are willing to pay more for their bookings in summer, with the US at $461 per night, 17% higher than 21 and 46% higher than pre-COVID days. UK is also ramping with 62% higher than COVID days and 29% higher than pre-COVID days. And Australia, 67% higher than 2019 numbers. So we expect a very good season for our customers. And with that, I'd like to begin our panel discussion and start by introducing our panelists. Jennifer, let's start with you. Can you introduce yourself and your role at Marriott Homes and Villas?
Perfect. Thanks, Vera. Thank you so much for pulling this together. I think it's an incredible opportunity for us to really reinforce the important role of women in this industry. I am a 13-year veteran at Marriott International. And so I've been with the company for 13 years. My most recent 3 years, I'd like to say, has been my most exciting. It has really been focused on the launch of Homes and Villas by Marriott International. And so I lead the business from a global perspective, and we like to call it the best little startup that Marriott International has ever seen.
Amazing. And Jennifer, Marriott has really successfully established itself in the vacation rental market. And I believe you brought a lot of what you've done previously in the hotel business. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, well, my prior life before starting Homes and Villas was leading the enterprise innovation work for the company. And so my job was to think about, how do we reinvent our brands that may have been tired? How do we create new brands? How do we create new products and services? Most recently, you'll see a lot of news about the all-inclusive offering, which my team helped to design and launch. And that work was really centered on, I think, at the core, the belief that I have, my team has, is customer-centered design and innovation. we always look towards the customer and understand their pain points and what's compelling. And we've been able to really bring that point of view into the home rental industry, as well as a lot of the, I think, incredible learnings that we have from 90 plus years of hospitality. Like, what are the fundamentals that you need to have in every great hospitality and travel experience? And then what are the things that you can build on top of that to make it delightful? And so those are the biggest lessons that we've brought from the enterprise.
Wonderful. And Amy, could you introduce yourself, although you're quite a guru in our industry?
Thank you. Thank you for having us. I'm excited about today. At VRM Intel, we are actually celebrating Women's Day with a spa day on Friday. So we're taking the team that worked on the Women's Summit. We've been promising that since we were in December. So I'm excited about it. I think that obviously I haven't seen a lot of you since the Women's Summit, and it's great to see you again. It was just such a special event. My name is Amy Highnote, and I founded VRM Intel about 10 years ago. And it started as a blog, and in 2015 turned it into a magazine and added some events to it. And so it's just grown from there. I think most of you know that I absolutely love the vacation rental industry. I think it's the sexiest industry that's out there. It's hard not to like making families build memories with each other and travel to amazing places. I don't know what it's not to like about it, but so I've been following it. I write about it. I observe it. I watch the data. It's just a fun job to have, and it's a fun industry to be in. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you.
Amazing, Amy. And I think that VRM Intel was a really useful resource for the industry, especially in the past 2 years with all the anxiety around COVID. Can you tell us a little about the biggest challenges that you saw property managers are encountering, and how did VRM Intel play a role into that?
Yeah, I think, obviously staffing, was the challenge of COVID. I think that we saw a lot of people lay off team members early on and then try to bring them back, which didn't prove to be as easy as I think people had hoped. And so there was a big whiplash. There was that 90% of cancellations turning around to 90% occupancy within a matter of days in some cases. And so even though staffing was a challenge, I honestly think one of the biggest challenges that we don't discuss a lot is the mental and emotional fatigue that came along with this in the industry. And I think for VRM Intel, what it did for us is same that you saw it at the Women's Summit. We just got really intentional about things that are inspirational and motivational and adding a component of almost cheerleading to what we do. That before it was very much about the fundamentals, about marketing, operations, property care, accounting. But to keep the enthusiasm up, right now, because it is so difficult and stamina is an issue that I think that we've learned that we need to be very intentional about the intangibles, about making sure that people are enthusiastic about their work and okay mentally and emotionally and physically.
Thank you so much. And Brandy, could you introduce yourself and Sextant Stays?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Brandy Canali. I'm the CEO of Sextant Stays. We're based in Miami, Florida. I'm really honored to be part of this group of women. And I love Amy's idea of spa day. I think I'm going to steal that. I've been with Sextant since 2016, little after it was founded. So I've been here right out of grad school. So it's been a really wild ride. We grew almost 800% since March 2020, which is a very fortunate story and one I'm really proud to be a part of.
Amazing. And can we add that you were also elected to the 30 under 30 of boards?
Yeah, thank you. It was a really amazing accomplishment.
Great. And could you tell us a little about the Sextant journey during COVID? Because it was quite amazing. You really defied the odds when, a lot of businesses were struggling. You managed to grow 800%, you said. So can you tell us just a few words about, the experience and what you've been through?
Yeah, there's definitely different layers to it. I think that some of it is luck and timing in terms of kind of when we had some funding, and then also calculated risk taking. Certainly, we expanded into New Orleans, so an entirely new market, 3 big buildings right at once. And, New Orleans is kind of one of the slower markets to recover. So that was a big gamble. And luckily, Miami really pulled us through all of that. So it was luck and timing, and also very calculated, calculated risk. And then one thing I'm really proud of is we didn't have any layoffs, and we also paid out, we do quarterly bonuses. We paid out full bonuses in March 2020. All of our staff has been, remained on staff, and we really tried to make sure that people felt taken care of, because especially Miami and New Orleans, both very hospitality centric towns, and there's a lot of uncertainty and anxiety around that. So really taking care of our employees that way has been important through that, because as Amy mentioned, there's a lot of fatigue. There's high demand. Some demanding guests as well, changes in expectations. So taking care of all the stakeholders in the company has been really important.
That's really an amazing story. And the fact that you focused on your employees is really inspiring. And last but not least, Lisa, can you present yourself? And I don't know how much you need to present Expedia Group, but a few words about what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, I am thrilled to be here. Just got back from vacation, and so I think I'm still kind of dusting out the cobwebs, but it also feels very good to have cobwebs to begin with after the last 2 years. And happy International Women's Day to everyone. So a little bit about me. I lead a team that is responsible for the global lodging connectivity ecosystem at Expedia, and that is inclusive of both hotels and vacation rentals. And really, we focus on 3 key areas. One is partnering with all of our software providers, or over 500, including Guesty, to ensure that their connection with our platform is technically healthy, and that they are doing everything they can to ensure you, property managers, hotels, are successful on our platform. And then we also work directly with property managers and hotels who use software, so that they can know how to use their systems that ensures their best success. And then the third thing is that we internally advocate, and this is actually one of the most important things that we do, and that is internally advocate for products, policies, practices to ensure that your unique needs, what we call the connected partner PMs, hotels, are taken care of within our marketplace, so that we make it as easy as possible for you all to be successful. And I've been at the company for 8 years. I started at HomeAway, now Vrbo, now part of Expedia. So there's been a lot of change over the last 8 years. And then prior to Expedia, I worked for the Walt Disney Company in branding and marketing strategy. So it's been an interesting journey.
Amazing. And one question for you. I think you know better than anyone the importance of trusted partnerships in our industry. And can you give our listeners a few tips on how to strengthen the partnerships, both from the OTA side and the customer side?
Having just come off of my holiday, I see it firsthand, which is that travel expectations are changing. Travelers are looking for easier, safer, more complete experiences. And even when I think about myself for the past few weeks, I just wanted to be pampered, going back to the spa day. I'm tired of thinking. And I certainly don't want to have to be stressed or think, when I'm planning for or actually experiencing my travel. And so as a great example, we recently stayed at a Vrbo, and the property manager reached out to us a couple of days and said, hey, there's construction nearby, and it's kind of creating a logjam. So take this very specific detour. And so we did, and that saved us a ton of time and a ton of stress. And especially since my son is 5, he gets hangry. And so we have to be kind of on it in terms of our travels. And so with that in mind, there are a lot of places that people are traveling. There's lots of different resources, things to do. How can you best serve all of those seeking those wonderful experiences? And really just focusing on exceeding the expectations of your travelers. Put yourself in their shoes. How can you best serve them at every journey or every step along that journey? And if you have questions, lean on us to help. more than ever, we are putting travelers at the center of everything we're doing. And we want to expand those efforts to help you scale your business. And so, in addition to our technology, we have a ton of data and demand data and trends to make it as easy as possible so that you can kind of connect with your travelers in a meaningful way.
That's a good point, and we'll touch a little about data later in our discussion. I don't feel we can begin our panel discussion without talking about COVID just a bit. So it's no secret that the last 2 years have been, very different. Can you talk in, just a few sentences about the major shifts you saw in your business, and how do you think that as leaders you help lead those sudden changes? And Jennifer, would you like to start?
Yeah, I mean, wow, the world has changed so dramatically in the last couple of years. We started our business in May of 2019, so we were only about 6 or 7 months old when COVID hit. And it has really changed how we do business. So we were a small startup team. We launched with 2,000 homes. Over the course of the last 2.5 years, we've grown that to over 52,000 homes. And so
Wow.
in that time, we had to take a new team and make it a highly performing team remotely, and grow that team and grow partnerships. And all of this had to be done largely remotely. And so it changed the way we do business. And frankly, I think for a lot of people who are in startups, some of the best parts of being in a startup is being together, building ideas off each other in the same room and collaborating. And I think it was really hard for a lot of the folks on our team to build and grow. And I know a lot of folks across, the professional world had those same challenges. For us, I mean, certainly for business, it went a dramatic stop and then a dramatic regrowth. And so for us, really, my goal as a leader was to focus on how do we develop the team? How do you get a team that is motivated to do the work, aligned against common goals, clear about the path forward? And the way we did that work was quite different. You had to really change the way you interacted and built relationships on a day-to-day basis. And like this virtual screen became the norm for all of us. And one of the things that I did as a leader was I really embraced it and embraced the whole person that was on the other side. So I wanted to hear kids screaming, dogs barking, and doors slamming, because it was an opportunity for me to get to better understand the people that I work with. And so for us, COVID changed the way we worked. At first, I was really concerned as a startup, not being able to be in the same room with each other. But we've adapted and figured out ways to actually deepen the relationship in ways where you kind of know the whole self more than just the professional self that comes to the office from 9 to 5. So it's overall, we've netted out quite well. We've continued to have growth from the business perspective, and our teams have been phenomenal. We just went away. I took my leadership team to one of our homes in Florida, and my husband was making fun of me because he said, nobody wants to stay with their boss for 3 nights. And I was like, I think my team does. And so we did it. And when we did a reflection afterwards, everyone looked across the table that morning, that last breakfast, and they all said to me, we really needed another day. And I brought that story back home to my husband and laughed.
People like me at work. Why do you say
I
that?
know, people do. I don't know why. He would think no one would want to stay with me for 3 nights nonstop. We got so much work done too. So much relationship building. And that was one of the best things. We appreciate the balance that COVID has afforded many people. I also appreciate that people are more willing to share their whole selves at work, because there was no delineating factor. And then when you get together, we really just make the most of that time.
Yeah, and Lisa, you come from a very different organization, not a startup, very established, a lot of people. How did you manage that shift?
Yeah, I think it's a few things. And by the way, Jennifer, you're gonna love this because my cleaners are here, and of course, right now they're like the vacuum cleaner. I can hear it like closely coming into the office doors.
I'm very clear that those are the most important people in my life sometimes.
No, I think there are a few things. I think one is, grace and empathy. And so I heard a great analogy, which is that, during the pandemic, we were all in the same storm, but we had very different flotation devices. And so some of us, were in the proverbial yacht and others were barely treading water. And so just really being cognizant of the fact that, yes, we're all going through the pandemic together, but in fact, we're all going through it very, very differently in terms of our flotation device. And so just to have grace and empathy. And then relatedly, patience. There is this principle, and I meant to look this up, and of course, being a vacation brain, but there is this thing called the change curve. And I'm sure it's from, Harvard or BCG or something, because it's very frameworky. But it's essentially this notion that people process change the way they do grief. There's different distinct stages. And some people process change more quickly and others more slowly. And so there's this natural set of reactions. And it's important to know that, and then to allow people to kind of honor their own change curve and be patient with that. And really kind of when you think about the grace and the patience, a big part of it is assuming positive intent. I know that I was not my best self at many moments of the pandemic. And so just recognizing that, even though people might feel different or you might have a reaction, assuming positive intent, especially for a large organization like Expedia, where we work very globally and I work with people all over the world. And then, lastly, well, there's actually two more things. One is gratitude and taking a moment and actually forcing the moment to ensure you think about and express gratitude. I mean, there were some silver linings in the pandemic, and I have to remind myself of those silver linings. And so for me, for example, I do have a young son, and normally I would be traveling a lot, and I wasn't. And so I got to see these wonderful kind of micro moments with him, and he's young. And so he is changing a lot. And it was so fun to see those moments. My house is super organized, more than it ever was prior to the pandemic. And my husband and I started some fun new hobbies. And then I think lastly, I've really learned, and I certainly wasn't good at this, and I'm better now. And I think, again, it goes back to that spa day. But there's, I think we've all heard it. I heard it early in the pandemic, and now I think it's become kind of a common refrain, which borrows from the, pre-flight instructions that we all take when we go on airplanes. You have to put your own oxygen mask on first. You have to take care of yourself. And I think the pandemic has taught me how to do that more sincerely and kind of in a more regular cadence.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. And Brandy, you did tell us about your experience through COVID, but do you think you adapted like new leadership skills, new ways of coping with your team during this stressful time?
Yeah, well, I think one of the most important things, we have a huge staff in the Philippines, which was happening, independently of COVID. But then when we all kind of went remote, it gave us more tools to develop meaningful relationships with all of our staff that we're seeing on Zoom or only on Slack, and really strengthen those bonds. So I think that was incredibly important, and a skill we might have learned more gradually over time, but this kind of forced that to happen. And then really one of our core values is being adaptable. And that was really like thrown into relief during the last 2 years. So, you can try to plan, but those plans, might be totally obsolete by the time you go to enact them. And instead of getting frustrated, we've learned to really pivot and embrace that challenge and kind of view that as an opportunity to show how, resilient and intelligent we are, and how we can, make the best out of maybe a precarious or bad situation. And also really tapping into the mental health of our employees. I think that was, people have had burnout, especially our field staff, housekeeping. The demand was really high, and people don't always leave their units in the best conditions. And so making sure that they felt, giving them shout outs. We have like a green stickies channel in Slack, and that's where you can give people, recognition and, making sure that bonuses are being worked towards and giving people goals that feel controllable, I think was really important. And I mean, we really had to develop when we started in New Orleans. I was doing our HR, which consisted of making sure there was benefits and then payroll, and that was it. And so we have a team that is, better able to manage this workforce and identify what their needs are.
Amazing. And Amy, the pandemic quite, impacted the way you work and what you focus on. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think that in the industry, just watching what was going on, we saw a huge drop off in marketing efforts. And I thought, obviously there was no reason to market something that had travel bans. So I understand why everyone pulled their marketing, but it was interesting to watch marketing not come back as a discipline that people were enthusiastic about in the way that they used to be. And I thought that was kind of interesting to watch. Also, what Brandy mentioned earlier about the challenges with some guest behavior and how much that changed. I mean, it's hard to manage hospitality. It's almost ghost hospitality now. They want you to be, you're not supposed to be engaged with them, but you are. It's a very difficult thing to manage. I think that safety issue that Lisa mentioned is a really big deal in booking behavior right now. And I think our websites haven't adjusted there. So I think that from an industry level, we've seen a real drop off in marketing fundamentals. And I think that's going to have to come back. I get why it happened, and it will only take a small downturn before people start focusing on those things again. I was looking at your data, which I think is super interesting, considering also what we're seeing from key data, is that some of these traditional leisure destinations, they were way up last year. So they're not seeing the same booking activity for 2022 yet. And I think that having a little bit slower, that's almost the more traditional the destination, the more of a slowdown they have in booking activity right now. I do think that will level out, and I don't think it's going to be a problem down the road, but it's been another interesting thing to watch. I think that, Lisa was talking about processing change and how we all do that differently. And I think that some of that change, it depends on who's making the change too. Like if it's your decision versus it's forced on you. And I think women have a real ability to be more engaging and, and empathetic, in how these things are managed. And this is where having females on an executive team, I think, can really make a big difference in a time like this where things feel a little bit more challenging, I think, than they used to, like every little thing. And I think that we bring a lot to the table in that field.
Interesting. It brings me to my next question, actually, that we have a record number of staff working from home right now, and I'm sure that has affected certain business flows. But do you think it also has a positive impact on diversity and flexibility of work? Do you think it actually created opportunities for women?
100%. I think, and I'm not sure that we've totally fully embraced it yet. If you live in Destin, for example, on 30A, there's not a lot of diversity on 30A. So, when you were required to hire, when you're trying to be intentional about creating a more diverse team, it's very difficult. But the upside of working remote in our industry is that call centers, for example, marketing teams, you were reliant to the talent you had in your destination. And there's a lot of competition for that talent. And it's being able to expand that and find experienced people in Southern California to be able to sell things at Disney. That's a real advantage, in our industry. And I think that some of the stuff like what Steve Trover is doing and Sue Jones, and trying to really harness, pull together these resources for companies to find talent in our industry across multiple destinations is going to really increase our ability to be more intentional to create, diverse teams. And if we're able to do that, then our industry will be a lot more fun, a lot more quickly. We've seen that even at the Women's Summit, and just there's diversity is like the amount of new ideas it brings to the table, the way people interact. I mean, and on top of that, it's just fun for those of us who just really enjoy this industry and the relationships, getting to meet new people that think differently and do things differently, and but all still have the same passion and love. I mean, that's special. And so, yeah, I'm excited about that piece of it. I think that there's a lot of positive that's coming from the remote workforce.
Yeah, I have to say from remotely, I'm sorry, Jenny.
Go ahead, Andy.
Like, we have this really incredible push now, obviously not for our field team, but for kind of anyone administrative roles, if you were able to work from home initially, now it's, yeah, like if you want to go to Argentina for a month, our CEO, Andreas, is taking his wife and newborn son to Argentina for a month and going to work remotely there. It's, why not? And we've had people be able, you know, if you want to take that option and have more flexibility, I'd go up to upstate New York and stay with my parents for a little chunk in the summer, and you can still get work done and find ways to have these kind of quality interactions that you definitely wouldn't have been able to have pre-COVID.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. Although I would push us to remind ourselves that a lot of women exited the market during the last 2 years because they have home life circumstances that precluded them from being able to effectively balance both. And so while remote has certainly leveled the playing field and opened up the option for more diverse candidates, whether it's women or people of color, I think we as leaders always have to say, how can I look at a panel of people who are coming in, and how do I open the doors for individuals who may have had to take an exit and have gaps on their resume? Or how do I be more flexible in order to get people to stay and retain them? And everyone on the panel has talked a little bit about this, which is giving people grace, right? And so, you know, whether it's I've got to have odd hours because my child's daycare closed, and so now I have to take shifts with my spouse or my partner, and so I'm going to be working from the hours of like 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. But, you know, while there are some benefits, I think we have to take a very proactive stance to say, okay, how do we help bring these people back into the work pool in levels that are equivalent or higher than what they exited in? Because I feel like women sometimes have to make that trade-off to say, okay, I'm going to take a break and, you know, take care of the family, and they exit off. And as a society, we need to set that expectation that work at home is probably just as useful, if not more useful, in juggling multiple tasks, managing stakeholders, and then how do we bring them back into the environment in a way that's material?
Jen, I want to touch on that really quickly because I do think it's important how we say things, especially in front of team members. And like, I completely agree with you. And I think that, you know, we're talking about these gap, you know, situations, and the 2-income household didn't work well during COVID. It just didn't.
No.
And going back to Lisa's point about the different flotation devices, because I think that's important. I mean, a lot of people weren't able to do things that other people took for granted. And I watching a real haves and have-nots in the work world has been an interesting exercise during this COVID thing. But when people in our industry, when management starts saying things like, oh, people are being paid to sit at home, and that no one wants to work these days, and things like that. I mean, that kind of management language can take down morale of a company really, really quickly. I mean, first of all, it punishes the people that are still there. So what, you know, you're not really, you know, winning anything, you know, by doing that. On top of that, it really, as an employee, makes you feel like that your employer has very little respect for you as a team member. And I think there's another thing about paying new people to come in and paying them more than the people that have been there the whole time. You know, that's another thing that shows that you don't really care. And this is where having diversity matters, you know, especially on an executive team, to stop these things from happening. But I have heard in this industry for the last, I would say, 18 months about how no one in our industry wants to work. And this may be one of the hardest working industries on the planet. So it's disrespectful. And I think that language carries further than people think that it does. When they're sitting in the executive team and talking about how people are being paid by the government to stay home and, you know, that kind of stuff. I don't think that plays well anymore. And I think it needs to stop in the workplace.
Yeah, I think you have to think about the culture that you're creating. Like if you're having, that's one thing we've really focused on. I mean, right now, hospitality in general, whether it's restaurants or hotels or vacation rentals, you're struggling to hire for those positions. So why is that happening? What kind of culture are you creating? You might have to offer more than this is just a job and a paycheck. Like what is making that person get out of bed or get out of the house every day and choose your company over the next company? When, like, for example, in New Orleans, that's a traditionally difficult market to hire in. And we looked at what the Four Seasons was paying and we were like, how are we not getting, people were paying higher than the minimum wage. And then we saw that the Four Seasons minimum wage was much, much higher. And we were like, okay, well then that's the standard. So that we match that. Now we can't match their free dry cleaning or several free meals a day. But we try to offer other things in terms of culture. But I think you have to, like, are you creating in an environment that people want to be in, from your line level employees through, more managerial director roles? You have to really kind of sell your company on being worthwhile for people's time and energy now.
I do want to touch one thing on that Jennifer mentioned earlier, because I think it's so important, and it's even more important now, with folks who had to drop out, who were dual income, or, for the most part, women who had to drop out in order to homeschool their kids. When we think about, when I think about my own organization, and then more broadly, I kind of see two places where there are gaps in the rung, if you will. And then the first place is in that area where women or people in general are becoming a first-time manager. And that's where I see kind of the first drop-off, if you will. And, I have regular conversations with individual contributors who are considering becoming managers. And the thing I hear more often from women than others is like, well, I don't have, it's the proverbial, I don't satisfy all 100% of the things that this job or this, that what it means to be a manager. And, or they're concerned about, how they're going to balance sort of the extra duties of actually managing people. And so I think, one is that there's a real set of things that we can model to show that it's easy. It actually is easy. There are things that are very, easy to overcome. We can send signals to them in terms of how we're able to make trade-offs. And interestingly, that second rung, if you will, where there's a gap and where I see a drop-off, is when women are thinking about becoming executives, right? Going from kind of middle management to executives, whether it's senior director, VP, depending on the size of the organization. And that's one where it's really interesting for me to have conversations, because usually those roles, you're taking on additional remit, large teams, like I manage, over 200 people, global in scope. How the heck do you try to manage 200 people when they're, around 15 countries? And so having conversations, modeling, and then being verbally explicit about how we make those trade-offs, and how there's also some fun things that come from that, which is that I can dictate what times I want to work, and I say no. If you want to try to put a call at 7 a.m. on my calendar, good luck, but I won't be there. I'll be getting my son ready for school. So I think, Jennifer, your point is so important. And then specifically, at least what I've seen in my org is those two rungs, and being hyper vigilant as leaders and as women executives, and how we can kind of get women over the hump in both of those rungs.
By the way, in my perspective, it's not just about how we treat women and the flexibility we give them. It's also the flexibility we give men. Because we decided that women need to go, home earlier, and women need to take care of the kids. And the beauty is to do it really allow everyone to participate in the home chores as well as the work chores. And you give them the ability to take leave when a baby is born, and to leave early when they have to. And by supporting flexibility for both genders, you support more diversity in your organization and more opportunity for women.
It is such a good call. And there's one, I have a quick story. So Harvard does these unconscious bias tests. And I don't know if you have taken them. They're awesome. And I have a story of a woman who is VP. And she tells the story herself, so I'm allowed to tell it. And she actually had kids when she's from India. She had kids early, kind of raised the kids, and then got her degree, and then got her master's, and then started working and worked her way up to be VP of engineering, right? And so she took this Harvard bias test around gender, and she scored really high that women should be in the home, not in the workplace, in the home. And for her, it was eye-opening, because what she realized is like, wow, a lot of the sort of the extra cognitive load, if you will, that she was carrying is because she had that orientation. And so it led to some really interesting discussions with her and her husband, as well as her team. So I think, to your point, that we definitely need to be inclusive of men, and also kind of understand how we also might be carrying unconscious bias around in terms of where we think we should be.
Great. And going into leadership and what it takes to become a successful woman in our industry, which you all are, what would you say are the leading skills that you would need to have as a leader in our field? Jennifer.
Yeah, it's I think a lot of people have said some of the attributes that I often lean on, which is adaptability and empathy, but there are some very hard and clear skills that I look for in any emerging leader or to be successful. And first thing is gauge your environment, right? And so my environment is a combination of large, big enterprise where I have to be very successful in navigating politics and systems and structures and people and organizations. And then there's a part of my core team that is like 100% startup. And we live and breathe on accomplishments and getting it done. The common themes there that I think people should think about are just like the fundamentals of leadership. One, can you set a vision? And can you set a vision that people believe in, that people can relate to, and that people think is achievable, right? And then really good leaders surround themselves with great people that and I know a lot of you on the call with me today have great teams, great people that believe the vision, and bring the skills that you need to create a balanced board of advisors for yourself, right? And so I've got people who I go to get it done, and I got people I go to get disrupted. I go to people who, are planners. And so surrounding yourself with the right mix of people, and then making sure you all are very crisp. What does success mean in metrics? Things that can be measured. Is that the number of units? Is that the revenue? Is that the customer guest satisfaction? And so stylistically, I think things like adaptability and empathy help you, but there are some fundamentals that every strong leader has. And those are the things that I think, certainly with the women I mentor and coach, always say, get the fundamentals down, get your vision down, get it clear, make sure you're surrounding yourself with great people that are diverse, and then make sure everybody knows how they're measured.
Great. Brandy, Lisa, anything you would like to add?
Yeah, I've just on that, it's, coming from the perspective of someone who has kind of recently been in a higher level position, for the first 4 years roughly that I was at Sextant, my title was internal operations, which means, who knows? It was kind of like block and tackling everything. And then when we added more structure and I had the title of COO, I had kind of like a panic moment of like, what does this now mean? And I realized like, I didn't even know who to ask for. I didn't know who to look to as like a model for that. I did just see a lot of men all around, and there's nothing wrong with looking for, a male mentor. There's really wonderful people in this industry and outside this industry that I respect and rely on their opinions, but I didn't really know what women to go to ask for like their story or any advice. So I think having mentors and seeking them out, and even outside of the industry, people that can give you a perspective that might help you leads your organization better. And I also think being in our business, we're growing so fast that we're going to make mistakes. And I think that we're pretty transparent with our team, and we're like, this did not work, but we're adaptable. So let's change direction, change strategy, and trying to be clear with our team that like, this is why we're doing these things, and making the whole team feel like they're a part of those decision-making. But I agree that adaptability is easily the best, especially in this industry, which has changed so much in the 6 years that I've been here. All the new technology, the new travel demands, all these things, you have to be able to change with the times and to acknowledge that what you've been doing might not be working.
And I'll add one thing, which so I think the intellectual curiosity, having the strong bias to action, being data-driven, but being able to make those imperfect decisions. I think it was Jeff Bezos who's talked about like, there's very few doors that if you go through, the doors permanently shut. And so trying to remember that orientation as we're making decisions. But there's another one, especially as you kind of elevate within an organization. And that's about how we build relationships internally. And so when I think about just Expedia Group in general, there's 23,000 of us spread out across the globe. And a big part of what I see successful leaders do is be that kind of that cross-functional translator and storyteller. And so if you're in the business, how do you talk to product and tech in a way that's meaningful? I think it kind of goes back to Jennifer's point around, creating a vision and then getting people to rally around that vision. But how do you get other people to embrace change, to embrace an idea, and then to actually become your army, if you will, in helping perpetuate that idea? And then the story that you tell around that so people can remember it. I found that skill or set of skills to be really, really important.
Amy, there's a question that was really important for me to ask you around the Women's Summit that you organized last December, which was amazing and inspiring, and most of us were there. Lisa, next year you should come. I
wanted to go last year, but
we tried, Lisa.
I know.
Yeah. So you've always been a great promoter of women in the vacation rental industry. And I know that when you launched the summit, you did get some various opinions, let's say, about why do you have a women's conference, and is it good, is it bad? Can you share a little of your decision-making process and why you think that impacts the position of women in the industry?
Yeah, we actually got more pushback on it this time than we did the first time, which I thought was obviously weird, because we'd already done it. It's not like it was new. But I do think the political environment and the way people have been talking to each other and about each other made people more open to say things that they previously might have kept to themselves. So lucky me. But I think, first of all, why don't we have a men's summit is the ultimate question. We hear it all the time, and every other conference is a men's summit, especially my data and revenue management conference. So that will be in Nashville, August 9th and 10th. You're welcome to come. But I think that the frustrating thing for me was actually around the sponsor companies and not the vacation rental management companies. It's the kind of event that is actually really good for the industry, and it's good for the vendor companies in a pretty special way. And to not get as much support on that side, we had, I think, 16 sponsors pull out. And a lot of it was budget stuff.
Was it due to COVID, or was it due to the specifics of the event?
Honestly, this is going to sound dumb, but I think it's because we didn't have a vendor hall. It's an ecosystem event. And so we encourage everybody to come and be part of it. So as you go and it's not, you don't have your typical exhibit hall where you divide up the conference into, here's vendors on this side of the room, here's property managers on this side of the room. But instead we really try to look at, if you're supporting technology, you're still a part of this industry. As much as you are, if you're in a call center or in marketing or in housekeeping, you know what I mean? That the vendor companies are still part of the ecosystem. And so the goal of the event was to really come together, have relevant conversations, be able to interact in a fresh way and build each other up and build networks, that women aren't as comfortable building across other companies as we've seen men do. And so I don't want to say it was a challenge to the good old boy network, but it's kind of like we want a network too, and a good old girl network. But I was really surprised at the pushback this year in particular. What I do know from the men who did go, and we obviously appreciate that support, is that not only do they see what this event is about, and that this isn't a male bashing event, this isn't a political event, this isn't a Me Too movement, at this show. This was just a way to engage in a new way. And but what I did find out from the men who attended is that they have the same issues that we have. Like, there wasn't anything being discussed that they didn't also have those challenges with. And I think it's just that they're just not normally addressed in other places. And I thought that was kind of interesting too, to know that some of these hard and fast lines that we're talking about, like men do it this way, women do it this way, may not really apply as much as we think they do anymore.
To me, by the way, one of the exciting things at the event is that there were 80 amazing women speakers. And then you hear at conferences that, oh, I wanted to have women on stage, but I couldn't find them. And I thought to myself, if Amy could have found 80 amazing women to speak, anyone can, find enough women to fill the stage and not say that there aren't enough good women.
Well, to be fair, managing 80 speakers is it's not easy anyway, female or male. But, I did have to twist some arms, including some people on this panel, to be there. So I understand it's not easy always to go ahead and do that. I mean, Brandy, Jen, you've been doing a lot of it. It's so important though to say yes right now. Like, when those things do come up, just saying, okay, I'm going to do the hard work. I don't feel like putting together a presentation right now. I don't want to prepare for a panel. I don't want to put on makeup at 7 a.m. for a Zoom in London. You know what I mean? Like, but just say yes. Like, right now, it's like if they offer it to a female and the female says no, they're probably going to go back and find a guy. So it's like, I do think it's important to take those opportunities when they come our way.
Yeah, Amy, I just want to say that I before going in, I didn't go to the first conference, and I was kind of wary and a little bit in a way that it was going to be like too woo-woo for me, and then what I loved I did it when the panel that I was on, the questions were not necessarily directed at how is this question applicable to you because you're a woman. It was just the questions about our industry, and that I thought was really great. And then what I noticed is that there were a lot of women there that normally wouldn't go to VRMA. There were women that were maybe lower, like in the company hierarchy, that their company sent. And I think that was so important because, you see the same people at VRMA every year. And so it's getting that fresh eyes and helping people build a network, male or female, is so important. And that it gave the space for people to do that. I met so many amazing people that I just haven't met before. Our paths haven't crossed. And I thought that was really special. And like with most conferences, I think that what you really take away is that networking component and building those connections.
It's so hard to articulate. People ask all the time, what makes it special? And it's really hard to say. But I mean, it's like first people show up ready to meet each other. They show up ready to learn about each other and listen to each other. Like, it really is a no judgment zone, like Brandy. I mean, I think that when the way people ask questions, at the show is different. Like, there's not that silence at the end where, just dead air. It's like, okay, it's not like, are there any questions from the audience? It's like, the whole thing is interactive, and there's not this feeling like I'm embarrassed to raise my hand. There's just a warmth and it's more than a willingness to listen to each other. It's like a desire to listen to each other. It's a next level engagement style event. And like Brandy, I wasn't a sorority girl. I'm not a cheerleader. I was kind of wondering about this rah-rah shit too. I mean, back when I first started it, but it's real. And it's hard to, like, once you go to an event like this, it's hard to unsee it. And I don't know. But I still have a hard time telling people why. It's always like, you just have to be there.
That's true. I do want to, we're getting close to the end, and I do want to leave our audience with some practical tips. So can you ladies share what are your best tips for property managers that are looking to expand this year in terms of leadership and in terms of practical ideas? Brandy, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. I think, right now everybody knows that you have to have like your software and your programs, but really getting your processes in place, whether you have 5 units or 500, because then if you want to double in size or add any size, you have the framework to add to that. And that's something that we're actively kind of reshifting right now and putting a lot of thought and energy into, we're at this size right now, what's going to get us to the next goal. So I think that's important, making sure your systems and processes and your programs are what they need to be to get you where you want to go. And then also taking a look, like an analytical look at the leadership team that you have and where your gaps are. So right now, our leadership team actually, like today, is in the middle of a culture index workshop. And we had our entire company take the survey, and you see what personality or kind of traits that people have. Are they detail oriented? Do they have more autonomy? And seeing, does this maybe sub team, are they optimized to really achieve the best results? Are we putting them in a place to succeed? And so obviously we're kind of just starting on our journey for that. But even in the day and a half that we've been doing it, I could not recommend it enough, because then you're going to set your whole team up for success by playing off each other's strengths and kind of blocking and tackling the weaknesses.
Yeah. Brandy, I just want to say, well, we work with Brandy and Sextant as a part of Homes and Villas, and her answer is a big reason for why we do, and we love working with them. It's the systems, the processes, the fundamentals. I would really encourage everyone to get what we call table stakes landed, because if you can't get those fundamentals around cleanliness, service, maintenance, it's really hard to scale, because those break the guest experience. And so like really great management companies get that down pat. And then they dial up all the delighters and the moments of truth that make it just wonderful for the guest. And so keeping those two things in balance, but get your fundamentals landed.
Great.
Yeah, I think to add to that, it's to add the margin component to it too. I mean, the margins in our business are super low. It's been a really good run. There's no guarantee that what is going on right now. Our industry is known for peaks and valleys. And so for those of us who have been in it for a long time, to give some advice to people, or, to kind of share some of our experiences with people who are maybe new in the industry, is that margin matters, and that cost control while you're building out these, while people are building out these standards and processes, is a really important factor, because watching margin, especially margin per channel, really understanding what each channel is costing you, the acquisition cost, and I am planning around that. We see this a lot, and when we have this period of really great times in this industry financially, I don't want to say COVID was great times, I know that sounds terrible, but financially it was good for the industry. If you didn't make money during the last 2 years in the US and drive-to markets, you should probably be done. This is probably not the industry for you. But there will be a time, whether it's national or whether it's a hurricane or whether it is a year of no snow, or whether, there's just so many different things that can happen in our industry. And when it turns, protecting the margin and protecting that cost structure matters. And I know a lot of companies are selling right now. There's a lot of consolidation, but eventually profitability is going to matter, even at the large companies. But it definitely matters at the small companies when you're not raising millions of dollars of private equity investment. So I just want to add that to what Jennifer was saying.
That's a very good point.
And then I'll end on a personal note, which is that what can we do to excel And I think about it in sort of like with three buckets. One is spend, appraise, model. So think about it like buying a diamond or an antique, which is that we have to spend on our development. I read somewhere that you need to spend 5 to 10% of your annual salary on career development, whether it's classes, resume, LinkedIn services. I'm a regular user of executive coaches to help me navigate new roles and issues. The second is appraise. Know your worth. I talk to headhunters regularly. I talk to recruiters. I want to know what's out there. I want to stay because it's a choice and not because of inertia or because I feel trapped. And so know your worth and then model. Model the behaviors to show others how you do what you do. The trade-offs, be explicit about the trade-offs you're making, why you're making, be vulnerable, authentic, so that others can sort of see like, hey, this is feasible, this is possible.
What an amazing ending to our session. I did want to mention that you should save the date for our Guestival, the festival for short-term rentals hosted by Guesty in September 13th in Austin, Texas. And we look forward to seeing you all there. And
we're excited to have you.
yeah, Lisa, the local. Yeah,
that's right. I can sleep in my own bed.
That's why we chose Austin, because of you. And again, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, your visions. If you have more questions to our audience, you can reach out to us at meetup@guesty.com. Also, if we didn't manage to answer some of your questions, feel free to send it our way. We'll make sure that Amy, Jennifer, Brandy, and Lisa would get those questions and answer you. And we look forward to seeing you in our next event. Thank you so much and have a wonderful International Women's Day.